Welcome to my studio. This is another video on how to set up your own digital fabrication space. We're going to be focusing today mainly on hand tools and the basics, what you need to get started to run your daily operations. This is not going to be a demo on how to work all these tools or the finer points of everything, but kind of a run through of what I think are the general tools you'll need in your space. Let's start with some objects that are familiar to us, some of the basics. Let's look at the hand drill. If you can afford to get a hand drill, I strongly suggest you do some. It's one of the basic tools you need for fabrication. Drill press, absolutely, it's great to have, but if you cannot afford it, a hand drill can do a lot of those things with a little bit of practice. There's a variety of sizes of chucks, cordless, corded. I'm not going to go into all the details, but I think a nice hand drill, something you can rely on, is great to have in the studio. Along with that, a set of drill bits, something that'll cut through multiple materials, metal, plastic, wood. These are jobber drill bits. The set goes from 1/16 of an inch up to 1/2 of an inch. Along with that, I would strongly suggest a set of transfer punches. These are punches that fit a specific size hole so that you can find the center of that hole and drill to that so everything lines up. It's a nice precise tool to have, and it's a nice complement to your drill bits. Some more general purpose tools are things like screwdrivers. I suggest a set of small screwdrivers, things that you can work on, small electronics, but also kind of a generic general screwdriver, Phillips as well as a standard head screwdriver. Also different types of pliers and side snips. I use these for 3D printing to cut my filament. I use them for wire. I use them for non-ferrous metals. Heavier gauge, I have heavier gauge snips, pliers, needle nose pliers, also for jewelry making, things like that. So I suggest sets of things like that, but also you can also get very specific tools based on your specific needs. Something to cut with, razor blades. I love these dolphin blades, these square razors, super sharp, X-Acto knives, all sorts of different utility knives that you can use for cutting vinyl, 3D prints, paper, wood, you name it. Sanding materials, things for these little belt sanders, these handheld belt sanders. These are great for getting in the corners and the cracks of things, whether it's metal or jewelry, 3D prints, wood, you name it. These are great little belt sanders, and you get a variety of different grits, anything up to 400 grit. Files, I love to have half round. I don't know why you would choose anything else. Of course, I use round files and very specific ones, but if you're going to do any file work, a half round is going to meet most of those needs and is the favorite file among most makers. So get yourself a nice half round file, and also some very specific either diamond files or jeweler files depending on the work you do. I use all of these on all of my materials. The specific jeweler tools bleed into all of the other ones. You can get a variety of hammers. I strongly suggest at least getting a ball peen, perhaps a claw hammer, a construction hammer. But a ball peen you can use in a variety of ways. You can use it for metal forming. You can use it just for banging things around. And also get something like a rawhide, a mallet of some sort, so you don't have to just use something with metal. A mallet with rawhide, rubber, wood, but at least have a hammer and a mallet. A flashlight's going to be super important for your studio, whether you're powder coating or just trying to find something that you dropped. I use a flashlight all the time to find those little screws and things that fall through the studio. A heat gun, I use a heat gun for a variety of things, anywhere from heating up acrylic and forming with it to just drying something in general, and fabricating with a variety of materials, foam, acrylic, things you need to kind of heat up and form. I also use it for patinas to help accelerate patinas. Some heat will really help with a liver of sulfur, and a lot of those brush on patinas. And then when you're working with those things, make sure you're working safe. Have rubber gloves, a respirator. I definitely recommend getting the right respirator, and one of these with the removable filters on them. Get something that can do whatever materials are appropriate. You don't need to go overboard if you're just working with wood all the time. No reason to get one that filters chemicals and welding gases. But be safe, earplugs, gloves, definitely eye protection. Make sure you're safe about things and protecting yourself. Again, this is not a demo. These are basic tools I think you should have in your studio. Also, a scribe and a punch. There's a difference between a scribe and a punch. Your scribe is going to be almost like a sharp pen or a nail that you're going to scribe into. You're not going to bang it with a hammer. Whereas a punch is going to allow you, similar to the center punches, just a regular punch is going to allow a hole that is going to set so when you drill a hole, the bit doesn't skate all over the place. And of course I have to have my spatula. I use this for scraping my prints off the bed as much as I use it for scraping supports off of the prints themselves. Measuring tools are absolutely paramount to any digital fabrication space. I would get a tape measure, something reasonably large, not huge. You just need something to measure things like plywood, so at least 8-10 feet long. Most of them will come in imperial, inches, but I also like to have something that's metric. This one actually goes between metric and imperial units. Smaller, but it's great for all that hand daily work. Straight edges. I like a 6-inch ruler, metal, and a 24-inch straight edge for cutting straight lines, for drawing straight lines, for measuring accurate things. Don't use wood or plastic. Get the ones made out of metal. This is a machinist square. You can get all sorts of squares, but I suggest at least getting a machinist square. They're very accurate. They're made of metal, and I use them on metal, wood, 3D prints, all sorts of things to help with my fabrication. And a set of dividers. Dividers, it's kind of like a compass, but it has 2 points on the end instead of a pen and a point. And this is used to scribe lines on the edge of things, to measure, and I use it in all sorts of capacities all the time. So these are the main measuring tools. The general, you can get more specific, whether you're working larger with a wood shop and construction, or whether you're working smaller, more like a jeweler or a machinist. Jeweler's tools. My background is in jewelry, metalsmithing, and sculpture, so I use a lot of those hand tools that come from those backgrounds, and I use them in digital fabrication, and I find they go hand in hand with digital fabrication. So one of the things you probably may or may not be familiar with is a flex shaft. This is a Fordham. This is used with jewelers. Jewelers are very familiar with this, but I'm sure you've also seen Dremels and the handheld Dremels. I suggest the flexible shaft that you can get with the Dremels, or an actual Fordham, because it allows you a little more flexibility and you're not holding all this weight in your hand. In addition, we have the third set of hands. So what it allows you to do is, if you're working with your 2 hands trying to hold something and maybe do some soldering, this can maybe hold your circuit boards or your wires. It's just an extra set of hands that allows you a little assist on the bench. Jeweler saw, not a coping saw, but a jeweler saw, and a variety of saw bits depending on your needs. And wax if you are going to do things with like metal, of course, and you need some sort of lubricant on it. I use my jeweler saw for metal, all sorts of metals: steel, brass, aluminum, copper. I use it on my 3D prints, other types of plastics and acrylics, just about anything. Thinner materials that you don't need to, nothing real thick like a half-inch piece of wood or something. Thin, 1/8 of an inch, and thinner sheets of metal and other materials. I also use a bench pin. You can see it's actually mounted to the front of my my bench, but this is what it looks like unmounted. You can also get portable ones, but it has a couple screws, and this hunk of wood goes in that hole, and it allows you to get a saw in there, and you can hold pieces on the hunk of wood while your saw is allowed to get on the side. It's a great tool from jewelry making. A ring clamp is a great jeweler's tool. It's great for meant for holding things like rings, things that are really hard to hold on to if you need to file and cut them. I also hold little screws, tiny pieces of metal, 3D prints, all sorts of little things. Things that are just a little harder to hold on to. And that wedge goes with it. Again, these are the basics. The general tools that will help you get through your daily operations in your digital fabrication studio. Don't feel overwhelmed like you have to go out and buy everything you see here, every tool, every specialty item. Get what you need, and start off cheap. Start off with hand-me-downs. Start with free things. Start with stuff on Craigslist, rummage sales. And then you can always upgrade from there. Start with what you know, start with what you need, and upgrade from there. So have fun, happy hunting, and get working on your digital fabrication space.